Any murder is horrific, but it's more heartbreaking when a kid is involved. You see, many kids are in prison for a ton of reasons, and that wouldn't amaze you. But some cases really spook out the reader, as if, did that kid really commit that? Well, they did, and these kids were sentenced for some of the most bizarre reasons. Number 5. Kids fatally beat their dad with a baseball bat and set their home on fire. Derek King, 13, and his brother Alex King, 12, waited until their father was sleeping on November 26, 2001, before creeping into his bed and beating him on the head 10 times with an aluminum bat. As a cover-up, the boys set fire to their home. Escambia County Police investigated Terry King's death and decided it was not an accident. The kids stated during their hearing that they committed the crime because they didn't want to be punished for fleeing, despite the fact that he had never physically threatened them. According to some stories, the boys were forced into a pedophilic connection with their father's buddy, Rick Chavez, in order to get rid of their father and move in with the now convicted child molester. Prosecutors claimed that the boys wanted to live with Chavez, the 40-year-old convicted child molester who allowed them to play video games, stay up late watching television, and smoke marijuana when they went to his place after fleeing home 10 days before the murders. The guys confessed the day after the November 26 killing, but then renounced and blamed Chavez. Alex, who was soft-spoken, stated that the boys first took the responsibility because they wanted to live with Chavez and that he had assured them that they would be cleared since they were juveniles. According to defense attorneys, the lads admitted to protecting Chavez and were briefed on what to say. This includes seeing their father's brains through a hole in his skull and hearing the scratchy sound of his dying breaths. Derek was sentenced to 8 years in jail and Alex to 7 years at a juvenile correctional camp in Florida. Number 4. The girl who took her parents' lives with her boyfriend. The actions of Kim Edwards and Lucas Markham, the so-called Twilight murders, shocked their native Lincolnshire in 2016. The case is remarkable not just because of the murderers' young ages, both of whom were 14 at the time, but also because of their victims. Kim's mother and sister, Elizabeth and Katie, were sleeping quietly in their beds when their lives were brutally ended. You might think, why would a fairly regular adolescent girl calmly plot and carry out her family's murders? Well, the answers to this might sound complicated and even nonsensical. Kim spoke quite frankly after her conviction about her deep and severe hatred of her mother and sister's connection, which she believed had put her to the margins. She said that she wanted revenge for the way her mom had treated her, and that she had no feelings for her mother. She deserved it, and she's happy she's no longer alive. When going back through the story, the history of unpleasant sentiments appeared to date back to 2008, when her mother beat Kim, then 6 years old, during a household fight. Following this, Elizabeth Edwards referred herself to social services, which resulted in Kim and Katie being temporarily taken into care. However, the family's file was quickly closed and regular life appeared to resume, but Elizabeth's relationship with her oldest daughter was a bit problematic, with Kim threatening to flee and even telling support workers that her mother had tried to choke her. Kim's suicide letter caused her frightened mother to ask for an emergency psychiatric evaluation, but no signs of mental illness were found in her. Kim said her mother had told her she'd turn out like her father, who had abandoned them. After that, she and Lucas began planning the murders of her family members with strange, calculated coldness. He abandoned the family when she was a baby, and they fought frequently. Kim's unpleasant emotions grew when she began dating Lucas Markham, whom her mother hated. At one point, the young couple fled their separate houses and were subsequently discovered sleeping in a woodland area just north of their hometown in Lincolnshire. Elizabeth Edwards seemed to detect something sinister was going on, seeing Kim and Lucas as a time bomb ready to go off. Meanwhile, Kim was sinking deeper into depression, and in March 2016, she attempted suicide by overdosing on pills. Lucas Markham went the short distance to his girlfriend's house in April 2016 when she let him in through a bathroom window. He then walked into Elizabeth's bedroom where he placed a pillow over her face and repeatedly stabbed her in the neck. Elizabeth screamed for her life and clawed at him till she died. He then went on to Katie, murdering her while she slept. Things might sound even weirder after this. After the deaths, the pair made love in the living room and settled in to watch Twilight while eating ice cream, which would lead to a sensational headline about the Twilight murderers of Lincolnshire. They stayed at the house for the following day and a half, being close and coupley as Kim's mother and sister passed in their beds. The horrifying image was disclosed only after cops pushed their way in after the kids went missing from school. This is the story of the Twilight murders of Lincolnshire. Number 3. The son who set his mother on fire. This teenager was sentenced to at least 16 years in prison for murdering his mother with a hammer and burning her body in a chilling murder inspired by a Coronation Street plot. Daniel Bartlam, who was 14, first informed police that his mother, Jacqueline, had been murdered by an intruder at their house at Red Hill, Nottingham. He later changed his statement, admitting that he murdered her after losing control during a quarrel. However, after searching his computer, police discovered a deleted narrative in which a character named Daniel Bartlam murdered his mother under similar circumstances. The youngster was inspired by a plot in Coronation Street in which one of the characters, John Stape, killed a woman with a hammer. Bartlam denied murder and said he was provoked. Jurors were told how the kid struck his mother 7 times with a claw hammer before pouring gasoline around her bedroom, putting newspapers on a gas burner, and lighting fire to the house. Her dental records helped identify his mother's body. The judge sentenced Bartlam to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. He condemned the killing as gruesome and pointless and said it appeared Bartlam had sought to get away with the ideal murder. And no matter what he did, he was caught and brought to justice. Number 2. The boy shot an 8-year-old girl in an argument. In 1929, a few months before the stock market crash that triggered the Great Depression, 6-year-old Carl Mahan fought with 8-year-old Cecile Van Hoos over a scrap metal piece that he wanted to sell to a trash dealer. In revenge for hitting Mahan in the face with scrap metal, he gunned her down. The youngsters were charged with manslaughter in Johnson County. Although juvenile trials are not normally tried with the jury, Mahan was found guilty after only 30 minutes of discussion. He was condemned to 15 years in prison, which he served in the Greendale Reformatory until he was freed at the age of 21. Number 1. Kids who took the life of a toddler. In February 1993, 2 10-year-old Liverpool boys, Robert Thompson and John Venables, took 2-year-old James Bolger away from a bottle shopping center parking lot. The boys carried him to the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, where they dumped him on his head, causing him to wail. As many as 38 spectators remained silent. Only 2 people questioned the 10-year-old brothers, who said the child was their younger sibling. Venables and Thompson ultimately led Bolger to railroad tracks, where they painted his eyes blue, kicked him, walked on him, and hurled rocks at him. They forced him to ingest batteries, and investigators suspect the lads may have placed batteries into the 2-year-old's anus. The youngsters then dropped a 22-pound railway bar on Bolger's head, tragically breaking his skull in 10 places. Ordered to be held at Her Majesty's disposal, the usual equivalent punishment for life imprisonment when the criminal is a youngster, the boys were told. The 2 were given new identities and released in 2001, owing to an unusual court ruling. However, Venables has been in and out of jail ever since for sharing obscene photos of minors. Throughout our list, this was indeed the most heinous crime on our list, and that too to a little baby. What do you people think? Should they be released just because they were minors? Well, considering the fact that they never stopped their crimes even after their tenure, it seems they should have been sentenced to a more gruesome punishment. Anyways, do comment on what you think about these crimes in the comments below. We'll meet again in another episode.